They optimized my bottlenecks, removed redundant pointer checks. The database's sub-selects are indexed to a T. They shaved the microseconds down till there was nothing left to count. I instantaneously found the answer in a breeze. But I've been feeling so alone. Nobody here is calling from a function or a phone. If I'm dead code, let me...
It's the Monday Morning Show. Today is April 5th, 2015. I'm Ken LaSalle. That's Josh Woodward singing Dead Code. You can find out more about Josh at joshwoodward.com. You can find out more about me at kenlasalle.com. My mom actually gave me the idea for this week's show when she called asking about some spam she received. The email, not the meat product. You've probably seen this kind of email dozens of times before. It was an email for a piece of software, and they were claiming the world would come to a particularly violent end if she didn't purchase their product. There's a lot of advertising like that, basically packed to the rafters with lies. And they're allowed to pack their ads to the rafters with lies because we've given them every right to pack, well, you know. Those who are my age, or Gen Xers, or the so-called millennials, know better than to pay attention to this because they've been taught, more or less since the 80s, that everything out there is a lie. You can't trust anyone. The world will crush you like a grape. It's not a nice way to live, but it's how we've been taught to live by those in power who made our society the way it is. And why is that? You see, when my mom was born in 1940, our country took care of its citizens. FDR's plans, and many others, made sure that most people, if not everyone, could expect a fair standard of living. They could expect to be treated fairly. The playing field was made fair for young and old, rich and poor. And after World War II, our nation offered the highest standard of living for all of its citizens. You know, as long as you were white. I'm not saying it was a perfect system. But the thing is, my parents were white, so they were well taken care of. There were no spam emails, or the equivalent without a computer. There was no such thing as telemarketing. The thing is, you couldn't just be bilked, swindled, and robbed by some faceless individual or corporation without recourse. And when you were, you could actually take them to court. It wasn't accepted as business as usual. It was the exception, not the rule. My parents grew up in what would later be referred to as the Nanny State. They were taken care of. Life was good. Then, sometime in the 70s, Republican politicians began attacking the Nanny State and chipping away at it bit by bit. They passed laws that broke up a phone system that actually worked on a regular basis. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. Smartphones are great, but it would be nice if the phones actually worked, you know? Republicans chipped away at Medicare and Social Security. They made sure people thought of food stamps as something for the lazy and not for the hungry. They shredded legislation that protected citizens against predatory banks. They destroyed protections to our environment and water and air and on and on and on. And the thing is, my folks voted for these people. They actually voted for all of this. Republicans sold all of this in the name of freedom, which is kind of strange. What freedom is gained by destroying our wildlife? Where's the freedom in bilking the old and the poor? Well, that's quite simple, actually, because the freedom was given to the rich, and it made them richer and richer. You see, when your protections are taken away, someone else benefits, and they tell you that it's freedom. And you, as the voting public, actually believe them. So when they tell you that they're trying to take away Social Security to give you more freedom, what they actually mean is they want to give your money to rich folk. They want to steal from you. When they tell you that they want to rescind Obamacare so you'll have more freedom, what they actually mean is they want to make insurance companies and drug companies and, well, it's basically about corporations and making them richer. This goes on and on. They strip all the funding from the FDA and you become free to buy crappy food. You're suddenly free to have drug ads making all kinds of bullshit claims on TV, just like tobacco companies used to advertise their cigarettes. And that's just the start. They called it the Nanny State to give it a negative connotation, as if a government that takes care of its people is somehow coddling them, as if people who expect something from their government are somehow looking for a nanny. The point here is that the Republican Party hasn't been interested in your freedoms. Freedom of choice, freedom of privacy, economic freedoms, any of your freedoms. They're not interested in that. They just want to steal from you and give it to their corporate backers. Because now the Republicans are allowed to take legal bribes. And who do you think is bribing them? Certainly not you. No, it's the corporations. So let's go back to my mom. Because you see, she grew up in the nanny state. And she voted for all these Republicans who told her they were giving her more and more freedoms. But she didn't understand what that meant. She didn't realize those freedoms, the freedom to be poor, the freedom to be manipulated, the freedom to be ripped off, they weren't exactly the kinds of freedoms she needed. She trusted these people, and they screwed her rotten. They screwed all of us. Now, of course, as I said, we are learning. Younger people know better. Well, most of them. But not my mom. She gets spam messages or telemarketing calls, and she thinks they're playing by some kind of rule, that she should listen to them. She doesn't realize that she has helped create a system in which nobody can be trusted to do anything but take everything you own and kick you to the gutter. And of course, now it's illegal to be homeless as well. The homeless end up in prisons, and prisons are owned by corporations that only make money when more people are in their prisons. And where do you think that money comes from? Right. You're free to pay for your own incarceration. And I gotta tell you, I get so angry when my mom gets taken advantage of. How can I tell her that this is her fault? She did this to herself. I can't. Of course. At her age, it wouldn't be right. All I can do is try to be understanding and tell her as kindly as I can that this is how the world works now. Because of her and people like her, as well-intended as they might have been. This is the world we've got. To be honest, I rather like the nanny state. Would more protections and more benefits mean higher taxes? Of course they would. And that's what the Republicans want you to fear. But let me ask you this. Are you really that much better off without it? Do you really like living in a lawless state? Because in so many ways, that's what we've got. How can I say that? Well, let's put it to a test. Think of one thing no one in this country can do. Go ahead. Pretty difficult, isn't it? With enough money, you can do just about anything. Now, consider what you can get away with if you're rich, as opposed to what you can get away with if you're poor. Pretty big difference, isn't it? This country can be made better, and I know this because it once was better. We need to stop accepting the shit we're fed and demand better. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves in the same boat my mom is in, wondering how the world became so ready to feast upon our bones. I love my mom, you know, and it's hard to tell her how disappointed I am that she's been so easily led by the nose all of her life. She trusts Republicans. She trusts her church. I find it astonishing that anyone could trust organizations so bent on dominating freedom of thought, freedom of choice, the freedom to be free. Things have got to change. We have got to change things. Let's get to the cool thing for the week, because this is some good news, and I think we need some right about now. There's a school of thought that has been gaining quite a bit of popularity of late, and that is the idea of farming indoors as opposed to outdoors. And I'm not talking about a little hothouse here. I mean farming inside of high-rises instead of out in fields. Now, why do this? Well, we're entering a time in history when things are going to change dramatically. We aren't going to be able to just drive anywhere we want for much longer because we're running out of energy. Oil is running out. And electricity, even with all the solar and wind energy we can generate, won't be unlimited. Our way of thinking needs to change, and it will change. We're going to have to stop commuting everywhere and start working at home, which is already pretty easy to do for many people. Okay. So we get out of those high-rises. We vacate those huge warehouses, cubicle warehouses, and we start growing food in there. Why? How about this? We use less water, less energy, and we have better control over the farm's environment. This leaves the countryside available for what we're going to need a whole lot of. Trees. We need to start investing in halting the runaway train of global warming. As much as the Republicans want to deny it, it's there, and it's already changing the world. It's not a change people are going to enjoy. So, more trees. We move the farms indoors. Agricultural firms across the globe are finding this to work better and better. We can already grow the same produce with only 1/10 of the water required for traditional farming. And these methods are becoming up to 40 times more productive. We can change the world for the better, folks. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Each of us needs to start putting our energy into that right now. There's no need to wait. Usually, at the beginning of each month, I talk about the business of being a writer, but this month, my mom was so much on my mind that I decided to skip it. But I will tell you one thing. I got a pretty bad review recently on one of my books. It's the kind of thing that would make anyone consider going into any other line of work. But the thing is, this is what I do. I finally found a way to do what I love, and I'm not going to let some reviewer on a website stop me from doing what I love. Besides, for this particular book, I've read plenty of good reviews, too. Negativity comes with the territory. It's just how the world works. And I'll keep doing what I do. And I hope you check out what I do. You can pick up my new audiobook, The Most Amazing Book You've Ever Heard in Your Entire Life, for free, just by joining Audible. It doesn't get any easier than that. I have a whole lot of audiobooks on iTunes as well. I also have plenty of ebooks and paperbacks on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other sites. You can find much more on my website at kenlasalle.com. And that's the Monday Morning Show for April 5th, 2015. Be sure to check back next week for another episode. Head on down to kenlasalle.com for all the latest. You can find my ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks all over, etc., etc., etc. You have yourself a terrific week. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others. Let's make this world a better place.
I've been feeling so alone. Nobody here has called me from a function or a phone. If I'm dead, code, let me die. 'Cause I'm only wasting memory alive. If I'm dead, code, wipe the drive. 'Cause I'd rather be a memory than a ghost who's still alive.